Welcome back to Hawaii is My Mainland here on Think Tech Hawaii. I'm Kali Lucas, and this is part 2 of an exploration of what's been going on at the Red Hill fuel tanks. Joining me again this week, like last week, is Ernest Y.W. Lau, who's the Principal Engineer, Manager and Chief Engineer, Honolulu Board of Water Supply, and Erwin Kawada, Program Administrator for the Water Quality Division. And thank you for coming back and helping me with the hard work of trying to coalesce this mountain of information that's accumulated over the last 70-something years.
Thank you, Kali.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you also to your wonderful communications officer, Tracy Burgo, for making it possible to have this beautiful mural in the background. If you get a chance to go to the Board of Water Supply on Baratania Street, this is at Juliet and May Fraser. Just want to throw a little art history in here, because why not? It's an asset, as are several things at the Board of Water Supply. But principally, it's the people at the Board of Water Supply whose mission it is to ensure that we have safe drinking water.
That is our mission, and we're glad to be here today. This mural behind us is actually something that was done in our building. Main office building was opened in 1958, and Juliet May did an excellent job on this mural.
It's worth the trip just to look at the art. So we'll do a little recap of what these tanks are, where they are. Zuri, if you can begin. And Erwin, would you like to take this?
Sure.
Or whoever?
We can start with, this is a cross-section of the island. If you're standing on the leeward side and looking towards town, on the left side of the picture is the windward side, and the right side is the leeward side, town. And what you see here is, in blue, is the rainwater that accumulates below ground to form what is called an underground water formation called our aquifer. The yellow formations to the left and right of the picture is a cap rock, which is a very dense material that prevents any water from leaking into the ocean. So this water body under us is where we get all of our drinking water from.
So when we're looking at this, the inclined shaft, deep well, artesian well, the halava wells that
Our lava shaft is an example of an inclined well that skims water off the top of the freshwater lens that's underground. The deep wells actually have to pump water from depths below in that lens. Artesian wells are locations near the coastal areas, like in Honolulu, our Baratania Pump Station, Kamiki, and Kalihi pump stations. If we were to shut the pumps off and we opened up the valve, water would gush out of the pipe and under its own pressure because of the cap rock that constrains the fresh water underneath.
So as far as the wells that are potentially impacted in the Red Hill area, they are all of this shaft variety? Is that it?
It's a combination of our halava shaft, which is about 5,000 feet away from the Red Hill fuel facility. And then the other wells that are to the north and south are actually what we call deep wells. They pump water from deep within the aquifer, the freshwater lens.
And then just to recap, that halava well provides how much water to whom?
The 5 closest wells in the area provide about 11% of our total water usage each day on average. Halava shaft and Moanalua wells together provide about 25% of the water supply for urban Honolulu, all the way out to Hawaii Kai.
Okay, so the Navy also has their drinking water well in for the Pearl Harbor Joint Base Pearl Harbor in this area, right?
That's right. This picture here, you can see where the yellow circle is. That's where the Red Hill fuel facility is located, and within that yellow circle to the southwest, just on the edge of that yellow circle, is where the Navy has its what is called Red Hill Shaft, or that's their Navy drinking water supply. And then beyond the yellow circle, in this particular picture shows all of the different well stations that the Board of Water Supply has, including our Halawa shaft, as well as all the other wells within this area.
And you explained last week how a contamination of the aquifer would, I forget your term,
it could spread and potentially migrate, and our concern is that it could migrate toward our drinking water wells, the wells of the Board of Water Supply, including Halawa shaft. That's a contaminant plume underground flowing with the groundwater. And remember that the groundwater is always moving. It tends to flow from the mountains from Mauka to Makai toward the ocean.
And are there ways to corral or channel or limit what water goes where?
It depends on the geology underground. These are large systems, so it's really difficult to control that. Sometimes by how we pump and where we pump from the aquifer or the underground water sources, it could try to control where flows go, but it's very difficult to control where things move.
Because it's moving through porous rock.
It's not, I know some people may think of it an underground lake in a big cave, but it's really not like that. It's basically water that is saturated lava rock. And think of lava rock like a large sponge that can hold the water, and it allows water to move through its cracks or crevices. And you know, there are things like lava tubes or areas that are between lava flows that are very gravelly and highly porous that can allow a lot of water to flow.
So if we think of that sponge analogy, so it's like if you had a wet sponge and you poured something on part of that sponge, it would transfer to other parts of that sponge.
It could potentially, move by natural forces to other parts of the sponge. But also remember that there's water being forced through that sponge from one end to the other end. That's groundwater flow. And that flow, and that's our concern. Could the flow spread any fuel that leaks out of these old 73-year-old tanks in either direction, toward our wells to the northwest or to the south toward our Moanalua wells?
Okay, and these are images from the Department of Health originally, I believe?
Yes, these are images that came from Department of Health, a presentation they gave last year. But what it's really good at showing is what Ernie talked about, groundwater flow, understanding where and how groundwater is moving and in what direction, and any kind of fuel leaks from the tanks, how do those fuel leaks, are they moving? And this kind of study, a subsurface study, a thorough one, is called site characterization. It's very common and standard practice in determining, the nature and extent of the particular problem that might be at a site.
Okay, and then there's some slightly mysterious notes on this. PWC Audit 3W3.
Well, the various notes in the arrows depict possible routes, what could potentially happen. Rainwater falling, contaminant moving from the rock through other portions of the rock, as well as moving into the blue area, which denotes or depicts the groundwater aquifer. And there could be many different kinds of routes that the contaminant could take. And so studying this kind of, and getting a good understanding as to how it's moving in the subsurface is extremely important.
Okay, and how much do we know about that?
Well, there is some information right now, but it's not enough. I think there needs to be, or we believe there needs to be much more extensive addition of groundwater monitor wells to get more information directly from the subsurface so that we can have a better picture of an understanding of what is happening.
And how many monitor wells do we have now?
Right now, there is a total of 10 monitor wells that the Navy is testing. Either they have installed themselves or they're monitoring from other wells that have been in the area. Right now there's 10, but that's not truly enough. There needs to be a greater number of wells, and there are many sites across the United States that have this kind of study undergoing. And they've actually literally drilled hundreds of wells to get a very thorough picture of how deep this contamination is going, how fast it's moving, and where it's actually traveling.
Okay, and in this graphic here, we get a little more of a sense of a scale. I don't know that we have the distance between, so there's 20 tanks, two rows of 10.
That's correct. There's 20 tanks.
The distance across.
Yeah, this is not drawn to scale, but it's just a depiction showing the 20 tanks. There's 10 of them and 2 rows of 10. And this has to do with whatever happened to that 27,000 gallons that actually leaked. Is it underneath the rock directly and is sitting there underneath the tank, or has it moved further down between the rock and at the surface of the groundwater table, shown in the blue? Or is it moving further, and what direction is it going? And then, of course, this depiction or this picture here also shows what is the impact of rain falling on the ground, and that water from the rain moving through the rock and affecting the direction of the fuel that might have leaked.
Okay, so let's step back a minute and review that the bottom of the tanks sit a mere 100 feet
Correct.
above the aquifer. Right. And the scope, the total, that sort of area. Do you have a?
Just imagine each tank has a diameter of 100 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So 100 feet in diameter, and there are 10 tanks, so 10 times 100. Just tank diameters, 10 diameters is about 1,000 feet. So if you had some space, probably the row of 10 tanks stretches out someplace between 1,500 to 2,000 feet across, under that ridge at Red Hill.
Okay, and they're a little over 100 feet below the surface?
Yeah, 150 to 170 feet or so below the top of the ridge.
Okay.
In the basalt rock.
And that's why, in part, the rainwater is an issue.
Yes.
Rainwater falling on the ridge can percolate down, seep down into the ground, around and over the tanks, and if there's any leakage, fuel that's leaked into the area above the water table, it could carry that fuel down into the water table.
Okay, let's look at the timeline, and there's, we don't have to go through each one, but some of the, just to give an idea of that this is not new. This is definitely not new. It started in 1940, and
well, yeah, in 1940, of course, the tanks were built, and then shortly thereafter, there were some studies that indicated that there might have been, or there was some leaks that occurred from the tanks in a 1949 report. Throughout time, as we went further into the future, the Navy has done some studies to examine what are the ways that they can strengthen these tanks, improve the amount of leak detection that they're able to measure. They've done a number of studies through time.
So in 2001, the first monitor well was installed.
Correct. In 2001, it was installed, and then starting in 2005 is when the testing began that the Navy conducted, and they continue to conduct to this very day.
Thank you, Erwin. We're going to take a little break and then come back and dig deeper.
Thank you.
You're watching Think Tech Hawaii, Hawaii's leading digital media platform for civic engagement, raising public awareness on tech, energy diversification, and globalism. Great content for Hawaii from Think Tech.
Aloha, my name is Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I'm the host of Sustainable Hawaii at thinktechhawaii.com. We air live on the internet and also on Oceanic Channel 16. I'd invite you to come for a fresh new show every Tuesday from 12 to 1 o'clock. I try to bring on guests that give us a different viewpoint on aspects of sustainability in Hawaii, as well as trying to unpack some of the difficult concepts of measuring and achieving sustainability, particularly with regard to sustainable economic growth and prosperity in Hawaii. Please join us every Tuesday from 12 to 1 p.m. Mahalo, aloha.
Welcome back to Hawaii is My Mainland. This is Kawi Lucas, and we have the two gentlemen from Board of Water Supply talking to us about the leaky Red Hill fuel tanks. And let's, Erwin and Ernest, let's get into, just take a moment to look at the tanks themselves again.
Okay.
So that's a lot, that capacity. Is there, is that unusual? I mean, are there other facilities with 250 million gallons of
Well,
fuel?
we've been told by the Navy that this is probably one of the largest facilities they have in the country. It's very unusual to have something so large in one location like it is at Red Hill. So it also creates its own set of problems by being so large and the age and condition of the facility.
Okay, so there are 20 tanks, and let's just have a sneak peek at what they look like inside. I mean, it's kind of hard to think about 250 feet, and then
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Erwin. This is actually looking a picture of what's on the inside of one of the tanks. There's this tower structure that stretches from the very middle of the tank from the bottom to the very top. And there's a walkway that's about the 200-foot elevation. If the bottom of the tank was 0, at 200 feet above that point, you'd have this little walkway that can take you to the middle of that tower structure in the middle of the tank. And they used to use that to actually gauge and measure the fuel levels in the tank, and also as a way to do any repairs to the tank.
Okay, so let's move on to the idea of leaks and repairs and how that's gone. There was a really spectacular one very recently. Well, relatively recently, given the 70-year lifespan of this.
Well, on January 13th of 2014, we were notified that there was a leak that had happened at tank number 5. And since that time, the Navy indicated that 27,000 gallons have leaked. They've also indicated that the leak was due to, poor workmanship based on maintenance that they were doing. But interestingly, at that same time, when the leak occurred, the level or the amount of petroleum hydrocarbon in the groundwater wells closest to that tank went up very high levels. So it really indicated that there was that direct correlation between the leak and the amount of petroleum in that groundwater well.
And how did our Honolulu Board of Water Supply find out about this leak?
I remember the date. It was January 13th, 2014.
Right.
Someplace around noon, we got a call from the Department of Health, Safe Drinking Water Branch, letting us know that the Navy reported a leak at the Red Hill facility. And I appreciate them notifying us. That's really one of the first times that we've been notified about leakage at Red Hill. To our memory, being there, Erwin's been there, I think, about 30 years. We've never actually been notified like that before.
Like that.
Oh, so all those other leaks that were mentioned in the timelines, there was no notification to the Board of Water Supply?
As far as we can tell, we didn't actually get that kind of notification we did on January 13, 2014.
Well, great. I guess things are improving. This
Well,
is wonderful.
we have a big stake in that water resources for our community. Understanding what's happening in this extremely large old fuel facility is very important to us because it impacts the groundwater, and that is our source of water for us.
And from our discussion last week, there's lots of information. People can go and watch that. The core samples, on and on. So it's not like there's any kind of mystery about the fact that there is contamination there.
We don't think so. We think the evidence, and it's based on information from Navy reports, records, data, the evidence is pretty clear.
Pretty clear to us.
Okay, and so faulty workmanship. There's let's take a picture of how that might happen. This is a picture of what?
Well, this is actually a picture of what the tank looks like on the inside, and this was one of the tanks. And the white little circles that you see there throughout the inside of the tanks are from inspections that was done, recent and probably in the past, that identified places that needed to be addressed. Either it was a flaw or some type of leak or some type of area that needed to have some maintenance done on it.
Do you happen to know which tank that was?
We believe we understand that picture is from the actual inside of tank number 5 that
The one
actually
that
did,
had
the
the
one
big
that
leak.
leaked, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tank number 5 is one of 20. I understand there are only 15 in use right now.
In use at a given time,
And then
right?
you had another really interesting graphic last week about how often the tanks have been inspected.
Yes, there was a report, a Navy audit report that was done in 2010 that indicated that the amount of inspection was, or there were large amounts of time periods that went by that there was no inspection at all. So that was quite surprising to us in terms of, in some cases it went as much as 45 years where there was no inspection according to that Navy audit report.
Yeah, back in 2009, it ranged someplace between 27 to 46 years of either no inspection or record of maintenance on 6 of the tanks.
In 6 of the tanks. Do we know whether any of those 6 are in use?
We believe some of the 6 are in use. Tank number, actually they're all in use.
Yeah, they're all in use.
Yeah, they're all, I'm sorry, they're all in use. They may be one of the 5 that are not in use because it's going through maintenance. Interestingly enough, tank number 5 was one of the tanks that recently went through around 3 years of maintenance and repair by the Navy, and that was the one that leaked after they filled it.
Relatively soon
prior
after
to that, in
right?
2009, it hadn't had any maintenance for around 27 years.
It hadn't had any maintenance for 27 years.
And, you know, we're not, I just want to make sure that we're very clear. We're not making this information up. It can be found in the Navy Naval Audit Service report dated August 16, 2010. And we do have copies available on the Board of Water Supply website.
And I will have links to all of that as usual at kawilukas.com when this interview is when I do the blog about this, there will be the links to all of that. So don't worry, you don't have to write anything down. You can find it. There is a lot of information, and that's to me the kind of crazy part of this. Okay, well, the federal regulations for fuel tanks, I'm pretty sure that you need to inspect them more often than 27 years.
I believe that's why the Naval Audit Service pointed that out.
In 2010.
In 2010, in their official report in 2010. So they did have a number of findings. The concerns about maintenance and operation of the facility, concerns that the facility wasn't protecting the environment. This is a good graph to look at, actually.
I was going to go back to the last one about leak detection. I remember, or when you told me a story about how when they're doing the repairs, how that happens. That there's a tremendous amount of pressure on these 1/4-inch steel plates that have been corroding for 70 years.
The tanks is 250 feet high, so if you look at the amount of volume at that height, at the very bottom of the tank, there could be as much as 100 pounds per square inch of pressure that's being exerted on top of the bottom wall or the bottom dome of the tank. This picture over here to the left shows currently the way the leaks are being measured is based on the height of the fuel within the tank. So that little picture on the right is an indicator of the amount of, or what is the height of the fuel inside of the tank. And it's able to measure down to a 1/16 of an inch. Well, at 100-foot diameter and a 1/16 of an inch, that's equivalent to 300 gallons. So if 300 gallons were actually to leak, or if it actually dropped a 1/16 of an inch, 300 gallons would have leaked in an hour if it dropped from a 1/16 of an inch. Compared to, there are technologies that it's able to measure much less than that, down to 2/10 of a gallon in an hour. Yeah. So there are technologies able to measure extremely low levels of leak. And there was actually work done and studies done back in 2000 where these technologies was designed or developed specifically for Red Hill.
Oh, you're telling me that 16 years ago there were technologies designed for Red Hill that have not been implemented?
And that's what's curious to us. I mean, it indicates that there is studies that show that it was developed, but it's interesting to us as to why it wasn't actually installed.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, very curious.
It is a mystery.
Okay, well, let's go back to that, the monitor well, the chart of the, there we go. So,
This is a picture of monitor well number 2. This is actually the level of petroleum contamination in the groundwater from monitor well number 2, which is the one that's closest to the tank number 5. There are 3 distinct peaks here, the one on the left, the extreme one on the right, and the one in the middle. If you look at the one in the middle, that was the one that happened shortly after the leak in January of 2014.
and refresh us about what's that green line down there?
The green line below that is the Department of Health Environmental Action Limit for petroleum contamination in drinking water. So you can see from, and this shows from 2005 to the present, the axis or on the very left of the page denotes the amount of contamination, and the line on the very bottom is the dates. It shows that at least from 2005 to the present, the amount of contamination there has exceeded Department of Health's Environmental Action Limit.
Okay, and there's a lot of little green triangles smushed together between January 14 and April of 15. What's all that about?
Well, each one of the little dots there denotes when a sample was collected and tested. And so on that particular day, that was the amount of petroleum contamination that was recorded or measured on that particular day. So they took several samples between those periods, and that's why you can see the changes there. But again, back to site characterization. The reasons for how you see the changes and the fluctuations there, it's hard. We don't really know why that's happening because we don't have a clear understanding of all of the different activities or forces undergoing underground. And that's why site characterization is very important.
So on April 20th, did you get a call from the Department of Health?
No, Kawi, we didn't.
No.
We received this information after we requested the information from the health department. And then Erwin took the time to graph it out, and we saw this large peak in April 20th, 2015. So subsequent to that, we asked the questions of both the Department of Health, the Navy, and the EPA. Was there another leak? And we haven't received a response yet.
When did you ask?
We asked the question, I think, last year.
Last year, the latter part of last year. We didn't get the data or the information until very late last year. Although the sample was tested in April of 2015, we didn't actually receive the information until very late.
And the reason you received it at
Actually,
all
it
was that
probably
you...
around November, October, November.
October, November
Yeah.
of 2015.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
is after the signing of the...
Yes, that's a very interesting point. The AOC was signed,
The
I think,
AOC.
on an administrative order
September.
September 28th, 2015.
Okay.
So we did receive that's a very good point. We received that data after we requested it, and probably in October.
Right.
Okay, so the data, you only got it after you asked for it from the Department of Health.
Correct.
And then there were lots more little dots during that period. Was that because you, Erwin, went hunting for more, or was the Department of Health more rigorously testing, more frequently testing in that period?
Well, there was that period where the Navy was collecting more frequent samples. So that's the reason for the more frequent dots in that period. Perhaps they were trying to understand, what the levels were and why they were at where they are, but that's the reason.
So this was your sweat equity, and you went through the documents and plotted all the data points.
I went through all the documents from 2005, and I looked at all the documents from 2005. Spent several days going through them and
It's
putting
about
out
10
all the
years
data.
worth of data.
10 years worth of data, and spent several days putting them on a graph.
Okay, so it wasn't your editorial decision to plot more green triangle
No.
data points.
No.
It's just what was available to you. So I think that's really interesting. That
Keep in mind too, after the reported leak in January of 2014, the Navy took more frequent tests, and then they moved toward quarterly tests. So that's probably explains why there's a lot more dots after the January 2014 leak for a while, and then it goes now to quarterly frequency.
Okay, well, we'll take a little pause here and then come back and talk more about that order of consent.
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. My name is Anu Hittel, and I host a show, Climate Change Beyond Outrage. In it, we go beyond outrage to look at solutions to climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. Join me every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Hawaii Standard Time. See you then.
Aloha, this is Maria Mera, and I'm here to invite you to my bilingual show, Viva Hawaii on Think Tech Hawaii, every other Monday at 3 p.m. We're here to inform, motivate, and entertain you. Join us. Hola, soy María Mera y estoy aquí para invitaros a mi show bilingüe Viva Hawaii en Think Tech Hawaii cada 2 lunes a las 3 de la tarde. Estamos aquí para informaros, motivaros y entreteneros. Apuntaros.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, wishing you to welcome and join us to see us on Hibachi Talk on Think Tech Hawaii. Join my co-hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Andrew the Security Guy, every Friday from 1300 to 1345. We look forward to seeing you. We'll talk tech and we'll have some wee bit of fun. And remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be. Aloha!
Welcome back to Hawaii is My Mainland. I'm Kaui Lucas, and here we have 2 gentlemen from the Honolulu Board of Water Supply, Erwin Kawada and Ernest Lau, and we're talking about the Administrative Order on Consent, which was signed in September of 2015, and it's been hailed as this groundbreaking agreement between the state of Hawaii and the Navy and the Board of Health. But you guys didn't sign it, did you?
We were not signatory to the document because this is between the regulators and the owner of the pollution or the facility. That would be the Navy and Defense Logistics Agency. But we're identified in this administrative order as subject matter experts to be consulted on an as-needed basis. One thing to keep in mind, this administrative order and consent was a voluntary agreement. It's not like a consent decree that's currently the city is dealing with that for wastewater improvements with the EPA. This voluntary agreement, it's basically a compromise between the regulators and the Navy to try to address this situation.
Compromise. Okay, so this is another, this is the EPA letter that talks about, within that scope of work, they are now, the Navy has asked to reduce the number of contaminants from 70 to 10.
Yes.
That's correct.
Mr. Kawada, can you tell us what you understand about that?
Well, as I said, the Navy has been testing the groundwater since 2005, and they've been testing it for approximately 70 different kinds of petroleum-related types of contaminants. And as part of the AOC work and development of the work plans, apparently an evaluation of all of that data took place. And based on that evaluation, the Navy recommended reducing the number of contaminants to be tested from 70 to about 10, and the letter that you saw was an approval from the regulatory agencies on that request.
So the EPA approved the
Right.
request from the Navy.
Right.
And what do you think about this?
Well, we feel it's very, very premature, okay, because as we said earlier, we don't have a clear understanding of all the forces that are taking place underground and where the different contaminants are going. Just because we're not seeing any contaminants now doesn't necessarily mean it's not there. It just may not be where we're collecting the water sample. So additional characterization or studying of the subsurface and continuing to monitor for all the different chemicals is essential. And once that is clearly understood, then we can identify what is the most important contaminants to monitor and then test those on a long-term basis.
So is it lots more expensive to test for 70 than it is to test for 10?
No, it's not. In terms of monitoring, many of the test methods can analyze for multiple number of contaminants at once. So there is no real gain or cost savings from this kind of reduction.
Is it much more time consuming to
No,
test?
no, it's not more time consuming.
It's the same test, you're just recording fewer.
You're reporting fewer, or you're paying attention to fewer contaminants that the test can actually look for and measure.
But the test is finding them.
Correct.
Okay, just because it's been so in the news with Flint, what about lead? Is lead on that list?
Lead is not on that list.
It's not on any list? It's not on the 10? It's not on the 70?
It's on the 70. It's on the 70. They
It
are
was
testing.
originally being tested for
Yes,
lead.
yes, they are
So
testing for
since
lead.
2005, they've been testing for lead.
Correct.
Has there ever been any indication that there was lead
Yes,
found?
yes, there are measurable levels of lead that were detected in the groundwater at different times throughout that period. Yes, that's true.
Including their drinking water source at Red Hill Shaft. Although the levels are very low at this point, but it is interesting to observe that lead has been dropped off the list of what the Navy needs to test for.
Mm-hmm.
So just to repeat, the Navy's drinking water well, which is the closest one actually to
Correct.
the fuel tanks.
Yes,
Right.
that's correct.
They have detected low levels of lead there
Yes, they have in their water source.
in their actual water source that is
I
being.
want to make sure, I think I know where you're going with this, Kawi. It is below the EPA's, what they call standard or maximum contaminant level for drinking water. But it is, it's not only the presence of lead there, but it's also the presence of other petroleum-based contaminants or chemicals that are also being found at low levels in their drinking water source.
So have we found any levels of lead in the not the Navy's well, but the Honolulu Board of Water Supply well?
No, we
No.
haven't found lead or any of the different types of petroleum contaminants.
Okay, wow, you'd think that the Navy would be just a little more concerned about this.
So like Aaron said, you know, this was of concern to us. So we did write a letter expressing the concern to the Navy, EPA, and Department of Health. And we have actually invited the Director of Health and the Regional Administrator for Region 9 of the US EPA to be present at our board meeting. Originally, we asked them to come in April, but it looks like they're going to be present either virtually or in person in our June board meeting, June 27th, I think.
And at that point, what recourse does the Board of Water Supply have to, I won't say demand, because you said this was voluntary, but to request that lead continue to be tested?
Actually, it's not only for lead, but we're saying that the 70 or so different chemicals that were tested for almost 10 years at 10 different locations in this area, they continue that until, like Erwin's indicated, we have done more investigation, drilled more monitor wells, defined the nature and extent of the contamination that's coming out of the fuel tanks, where it's flowing and what's flowing. Then at some point in the future, they can justifiably reduce that after they've done the site characterization. We feel it's premature to do it now. And we only found out about this by looking at the new website that the EPA created to actually post information about Red Hill up there. We appreciate them putting information on the website for the sake of transparency. And when we looked at the website more closely, lo and behold, we found this letter there that basically approved reducing the number of contaminants being tested at the monitor wells from 70 to around 10.
So although the Board of Water Supply is an expert, a subject matter expert, there's no requirement that even in really germane decisions like this, that the Board of Water Supply be communicated with.
We can't speak for the EPA and DOH and why they didn't contact us for our opinion or at least let us know that they took the action, which occurred back in February of this year. And we just learned about it, I think, last month.
Right, about a month
So
ago.
what was the Board of Health, excuse me, the local Board of Health, Hawaii State Board, Department of Health, what was their role in this? How are they involved, or?
They are actually signatory to the letter. The letter that approved reducing the number of contaminants down to 10 was signed by the US EPA Region 9 and also the Department of Health, the Red Hill Project Coordinator.
Okay, wow.
So we're very curious to find out what their reasoning, and we would like them to appear at a public meeting in front of the Board of Water Supply to explain their reasoning and justification for taking that action, and also be open to questions from our board.
Okay, we don't have a lot of time left, so even though this is so intensely interesting, let's move on to the Red Hill Administrative Order on Consent, and what this governing document, which is right now that's sort of the governing document for the facility, right?
So basically, the agreement, the voluntary agreement, I want to stress that, was signed in September of 2015. It allows the Navy to take between 22 to 27 years from the effective date, September 2015, to actually complete all improvements to the tanks. And those improvements are yet to be determined. Our concern is that there should be action taken a lot quicker than that. Remember, by then, the tanks will be close to 90 plus years old, almost a century old by the time the final tank is upgraded. And we feel that that is really not going to, that is not acceptable. The risk of failure continues to grow each year as the corrosion on the steel plate continues to propagate.
So I think I read somewhere that the Navy inquired of you folks at Board of Water Supply if you might have some water available should theirs be contaminated.
Yeah, you raised an interesting point there. Back around May of last year, we did get a letter from the Navy asking us if they had to shut down Red Hill Shaft, as part of contingency planning, could they get the water from the Board of Water Supply? And we didn't answer yes or no. We did send a letter back with a lot of questions to get more clarification, like what is the reason for shutting your wells down? Maybe we have similar concerns as you. I think they would be asking someplace between 6 to 9 million gallons of water a day from the Board of Water Supply system. But we feel that it's clear their Red Hill Shaft, and in their documents in 2010, they actually did a study to look at installing a treatment system at their drinking water source to remove the petroleum from it. And so I think they understand the risk to their source.
Okay, so they are actively doing something. Thank you both for coming back, and this obviously isn't the end of the story.
No.
There's more to be explored, and I am especially interested about the meeting that will hopefully happen in June with the EPA, and that will happen here in Honolulu?
Yes, it'll be at Board of Water Supply's offices on Beretania Street, and the public is welcome. There'll be a public notice out 7 days in advance.
Wow. Well, thank you both so much
Thank
for
you,
being
Connie.
such water heroes.
Mahalo.
Thank you.